Status Enterprise includes a number of different ways for creating and distributing reports. This can be automated, either based on a schedule or triggered by certain conditions, or reports can be generated manually by a user from within a Mimic. This manual report creation is what I'm going to talk about in this video. To create a report, no matter which method you use, there are a couple of different things you'll need to have in place. One, you're going to need to have at least one asset in your data model that holds the data that's going to be populating your report, and you're going to need to have at least one mimic that you can use to display that data. For this demonstration, I'm going to create a simple report, a two-page report, using data from one of the water tanks that I have already created in my data model in this water tank collection. And I will be creating the report using a couple of mimic templates that I've already created. I have one very simple template here that just has a basic trend graph. It does include a label to tell me which water tank I'm looking at, as well as a date time control so that I can see exactly when that report was generated. The second page of the report is going to include the average water level, maximum water level, and minimum water level from the previous 24 hours using the function text block control. And again, I've repeated the label at the top to show me which water tank I'm looking at, as well as the date time control. To create a report, I'm going to create a new mimic. This will just be a regular mimic, and we'll call this report button. Well, what I'm going to do is actually create a report from within a mimic in the mimic runtime, and I'm going to do that using the create report button that you'll find in the toolbox of both the mimic designer and the application designer. It's under the buttons and switches category. You can just drag the create report button onto my design surface. Now I am able to modify this button, give it a different background color. I can give it a different border color, border thickness, a lot of the usual properties that are going to be available on the button controls that allow you to modify the way they look. Change the font color, font size, font family. You can change the press brush, that's the color or the appearance of the button while it's actually being pressed. I'm just going to leave it very simple for this purpose, but just know that it can be customized. Now, to configure this button, I need to go to the setup property in the properties panel, and I have a number of different options here. I'm going to create a file name. In this case, I will call it the water tank report. I can give it a new date time format. There is one set by default. I'll just leave that as it is. For action, I can choose to either save this report to a file, or I can save it to my data model. I'll save it to a file in this case, and for that reason I'll need to select a report path. This is where that file is going to be saved. I'll make a new folder on my desktop called reports. I can choose what type of file I would like it to be. In this case, I'm going to select PDF, and I can choose a creation delay. The creation delay will be an amount of time that passes between when you actually press the button and when the report is generated. In this case, because I'm using the function text block control and trend graph, I will want to allow a few seconds for it to actually make those calculations and ensure that the actual calculated values are what are going to appear in my report. So I'm just going to give it a delay of, let's say, 3 seconds just to be safe. Now I select which mimics I would like to use for my report pages. I select the add button. Page 1, I will use the water tank report page 1, and select the asset path. I need to select which of the water tanks I would like to generate the report for. I'll just go ahead and use water tank 1 in this case. If I selected relative here, then it allows you to make that selection during runtime. Page 2, select the asset. Again, this will be the same water tank. We're going to see relevant information from that same tank. Select OK. I'll save my changes. If I run this mimic, I'm going to create report. The report button disappears. There's a creation delay. Now if I go to my reports folder, I will see that I have 2 PDFs created, or the file name that I configured, as well as a timestamp. Now, the Create Report button also works in the web gateway, so I wanted to take a quick look at that before we wrap this up today. If I open up my gateway, it will open my default web browser, which in this case is Chrome, and I can log in using my username and password, select the mimic that I would like to view. One difference you'll notice in the web gateway is rather than using the directory that you assigned during the setup of your Create Report button to save the files, your browser will download the files to your default download directory. Wherever you would ordinarily download any files from the internet using that particular browser, that's where these reports will go as well. Otherwise, it's the same process. I click Report. You do get a brief preview of the report before you'll get a message that tells you that the report was successfully created. You'll see that they were downloaded here. You can take a look at what they look like. You see there's page 2 actually, and page 1 of the reports with the data populated from water tank 1.